Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by the founder of Your Game Plan, Mr. Danny Heath. How are you today, Danny?
Very well, thank you, mate. Very well. Thanks for having me on. Really
No
looking forward
worries.
to getting into it with you.
I really feel like sometimes I need one of those buttons that have that like canned applause. Just so when
Yeah,
I introduce it, oh yeah. I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
yeah. I was
Yes.
going to clap myself, but I thought it might come across as a little bit, a
Dude,
little
own
bit
it,
strange.
man. Own it.
Yeah,
You
is that
know.
it?
You before we get into it, you've been in recruitment. That's what recruiters do. They own their
Well,
space.
yeah. I mean, I was always on the recruitment marketing side, so I was the one providing the recruiters with the
Yeah.
with the candidates to applaud
With the
themselves with. So
capabilities to enable them
that
to
was it.
clap.
I was
That's
always
all
the
good, man.
silent one in the background. But,
We won't go
I
into that. I
made it.
feel like it's a sore
No,
subject.
yeah, no. No, I love recruiters. I love recruiters.
We don't want you like going in the corner of the room, crying and rocking back and forth.
Coming back
But
with a tissue and everything, it'll be fine.
exactly, that's not what we want here. We're
No,
here
no.
to talk
Happy
about
thoughts.
exactly what the beauty that you've created in terms of your game plan. So
Yeah.
without further ado, let's just kick this off by getting a little bit of an overview of what your game plan is. And
Mm.
this is a really funny, I love the name, but it's really
Thank
hard
you.
to say in a sentence because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
always just makes me feel like I'm asking you what your game plan is, man. Like, what's your
yeah.
game plan? So what
Well,
is
the
game plan?
idea. The idea of the name was just before we explained the product. Like I wanted to call it the blueprint, but I don't know if I ever, because I love Jay Z. I don't know if I overestimated how much everyone else does, and whether they would just think, oh, he's just named after a Jay Z album. So we kind of come up with this idea of like a blueprint for your career, or a launch pad for your career. Like launchpad just sounded like a bit too like commercialized and
Bit
something that like
startup.
yeah, it's just a bit common. So we landed on the blueprint, and then I was out for drinks with a friend, and they were like, "It just, it needs to be something else." And then we went to Your Game Plan, largely because of at some point we're hoping to run quite a large scale ad campaign of search your game plan. What's your game
Got
plan?
you.
Like, there's a lot of marketing context around it. Um, but yeah, so the product itself is a free employability and soft skills video training portal for young people in the UK. So we say 15 to 18, but we're not really precious about the ages. That's just the age where it will be super prominent. So the idea is that I don't feel like there is anywhere near enough careers training accessible to schools, youth employment charities, more, young people charities in general, to really help young people get into the working world. Like, I think there's a severe emotional intelligence lack from employers and suppliers, which is just because there are jobs from employers and young people who need those jobs doesn't mean that they're automatically going to apply for them.
Yeah.
So, and that's because they're not upskilled. These young people don't know how to talk in public. They don't know how to handle criticism. They don't know how to prepare their minds mentally for interviews and stuff like that. So these are all things that we all know as professionals. We've lived it and we've breathed it. But, we just expect young people to be able to walk in to an interview or walk into an office environment and know things. And I think particularly those people that don't go to university, this is more prominent because you learn a lot of that soft skills at university, but you don't at 16 or 17. So I wanted to build something that kind of helped eradicate the inequality around early talent in particular, because, if you're in a good school or you're born into an affluent postcode, like your school's going to have quite a bit more funding, which is why we offered this for free. It was a bit of a conversation internally about, do we take this to market for free? And that was always what we wanted to do. Obviously, for commercial reasons, that conversation had to come up. But the one thing we didn't want to do was be part of the inequality problem. It just turns out that, a school 5 minutes down the road in a certain postcode could have access to this. Then, the school just down the road couldn't afford it. So we decided to run with the free model. And it's something that we're really happy about and something that will never change, because we've just had so many great messages from charities in particular and schools that are like, we just couldn't access this without you giving it to us for free. So what we did in terms of getting the business live was, my experience is largely around youth, is around early talent recruitment, but on the graduate recruitment side.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for The Guardian, for News UK, for The Tab, and a few other brands where I would manage the commercial teams to do graduate recruitment advertising. And that was great. And we were doing a lot in all of those businesses to help with kind of diversity and inclusion, particularly around, getting more women into certain industries and making sure that recruiters were being more socially mobile in their recruitment. But it was quite heavily linked at graduate level. And the problem with the school leaver apprenticeship side was there's not really enough suppliers in the space that are doing anything different to galvanise the young people. So I wanted to change that, and to do that, I felt like it had to be through video learning. Because, like, if you consider how many schools there are in the UK, there's thousands and thousands of them. And if it was an idea of going into these schools to train people, we just wouldn't be able to do it. So I wanted to find a way to do it digitally. And to do that, we had to find a specialist in video training. So I kind of spoke to a few, and there's a company called New Skills Academy, who also have a sister business called Staff Skills Training, who are a leader in the UK space for digital training. And I kind of approached their CEO, Chris Morgan. I said to him, look, I really want to help young people. I really think this is an important part of what someone needs to do. But I don't have any idea how digital training works because I've never done it.
I love it when stories are like that. It's like, I know how to solve the problem, but I just don't quite know the how aspect.
Exactly. And I was kind of like, look, I know the employers want to help, and I know the schools need the help, and then I know the young people want to better themselves to improve their career chances. Mm-hmm. But like, what is the way to do it? So Chris kind of sat down and went, look, what do you need? So we needed some startup funding, and I said, well, I need you to build me a complete digital training suite and a website.
I'm not asking for much, Chris.
No, and Chris and his brother Dan kind of just sat there and went, exactly what you said. They said, oh, so a small request then. I was like, yeah, not a big deal. So we went out and we set out to do that. So this was kind of last September, we kind of officially started this business. So Chris, Dan and I sat down and went, how do we make this work? And we brought in some teacher friends really at this point, people that are involved in schools, and they helped us set out the kind of criteria for the training. So Chris and Dan built us a platform. So we have 27 training courses that are basically featured into 5 categories. There's application and CV, which is largely around interview and CV writing. Mm-hmm. There's career planning. So these are courses to help a young person set out in their mind how they want to pursue a career, whether that's entrepreneurial, whether that's in an office, whether that's outside, whatever those things are. Then we have skills for the workplace, which is things like presenting, talking in public, that kind of thing, which is super important. Behaviours for the workplace. And these are things like understanding body language, how to handle criticism in the workplace, things that are kind of more mental around the workplace. And then we have mental health and lifestyle well-being. So this is super important to us because I don't think anyone before, for young people, has really associated the pressure of finding work, the stress and anxiety of going to an interview, or even going into your first day in an office. Like, these are things that are hard things to do, that everyone's just kind of expected people to, and it's very that old kind of old boys club mentality of throwing in at the deep end. Like,
so true.
And we need to move away from that. So we wanted to, where we could, embed mental health as much as possible into the situation. So what we did with all of those courses when they were built, we then got them all certified by the CPD, which is the body for continual professional development, which again was really important to me because, that's widely recognised by HR managers up and down the country, but it just adds some gravitas and adds some weight to the training. So when young people are doing it, they feel like it will really benefit them further down the line. And that's kind of how we set up, and that's kind of what the ambition was to do. And we've done that effectively. We haven't really strayed too much from that initial idea to where we are today. There's obviously been a few curveballs because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and who saw that coming?
Launch something while all the schools close.
Never do that if anyone wants any advice. So we had to work towards the changes we need to make there. But the actual product in itself, the offering didn't change much because it was such an obvious problem for me that needed solving. Yeah. We didn't need to defer away from the key aspects of it.
Really good. And what I love about that is you knew it was a problem that needed solving, but you weren't scared about the scale of that problem because, like you said, it is a huge, enormous task, mammoth task that you've adopted, and you've put yourself as that forefront of change, which is fantastic. For you, what's the biggest struggle? Because, like you said, the school education side of things, budget seems to be like the top of their list with anything that they want to go and do. Even though you guys are free, is there that assumption that it's like, yeah, you're free for now, but actually, if we join you, is there going to be some sort of like catch? What's the catch?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So we don't just, one thing that's important, we work with schools and colleges, but one thing we were really keen to push this out to was charitable organisations and youth employment, local government groups. So, we were speaking to 25, 30 charities at the moment. A lot of them have signed up to work with us at the moment. We're doing a lot around working with local governments to increase how they speak to young people and what they offer. So with all of those and schools, we've had countless Zoom calls introducing the product to schools and stuff. And we've heard the phrases about it's too good to be true, like this is exactly what we need, what's the catch? And, a lot of people have said, when will you start charging? And we just won't. And, because that will completely take away what we're trying to achieve. So we won't charge, we'll always be free. And I think schools believe us, and I suppose until we give them reason not to. But it is certainly met with a little bit of, okay, why are you doing this for free?
Yeah. Then the obvious question is like, well, then how do you grow this? How do you sustain this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem we're trying to fix on the user side, if you like, we've just discussed the young people. There is also a problem on the employer side as well. So the apprenticeship levy that the government introduced 3 years ago is basically, and I don't know if you're aware of it at all, but it's basically told businesses of a certain size, you have to hire more non-degree educated people. And the emphasis of this business was to improve the chances for young people who don't go to university, or young people that don't want to go to university, because I think that's a very important thing to make clear. Just because someone doesn't go to university doesn't mean they couldn't have. And I think that's the thing that people miss sometimes. And I think this pandemic has highlighted that a little bit, that, I think university is certainly right for a lot of people, but the universities are charging $9,000 for students to do the same thing they were charging them to do $9,000 for last year. And I think students are maybe starting to sit there and look at this and go, hold on a second, do we need to come out in £27,000 debt? Or can we get an apprenticeship, which means over the same time we'll be earning £27,000?
How best is our 3 years or 4 years
right
spent?
And you're talking about a £60,000 swing. And, young people all around the country tell you how hard it is to get on the housing market and how much you need to save. And I think these things are really starting to turn for people. But schools traditionally haven't really given them the insights into apprenticeships, because schools are funded largely on how many people they send to university. So there's this ecosystem that is kind of eating itself sometimes. And I think young people now have so much access to information that they're likely to make more decisions for themselves. So what's happening here, you've got the government apprenticeship levy, and you've got employers who are trying to do a lot more around their CSR and recruitment. They want to hire people from different socio-economical backgrounds. They want to hire more, diversity in general. And what they've realized, and what I think is super important, is that if you're hiring early talent as an employer, you are limited to the pool of graduates that are graduating. If you only hire graduates, it doesn't matter how diverse you want to be. The large majority of university graduates are still, white. They're still middle class. That is the crux of it.
It hasn't changed, right?
No. So if you want to increase your diversity as an employer for your early talent, you have to go deeper. You have to go further back than university. So there is an obvious need here for someone to supply employers with a better talent pool for this space.
And are they open to that? Are they keen to do that? Because obviously the easiest route for them is do what they've always done. Get a graduate recruitment company on the case and have a load of graduates come in and sort of tick that box.
Yeah, I mean, having worked with a lot of them over the last kind of 5-6 years, that they are all doing quite a lot in this space. My personal opinion is they've not really been given enough tools to be able to succeed as much as they'd like to. It's really hard to engage schools as employers, because schools want their kids to go to universities, right? So employers, it's a lot harder for employers to engage with schools than it is with universities, for example. So what part of the reason, strategically for our business commercially, was that if we're offering something to schools which is super important to them, which it is, we've signed up 240 schools, we're signing up 50 schools a week at the moment. So we know it's important to schools. So schools then are happy to let us in, if you like, and then the employers can connect with them through us. Yeah. So I think what we're doing, hopefully, is opening a stream for the employers. And I think furthermore to that point, in my opinion, there are 2, potentially 3 people that are in charge of upskilling young people from an employability background, and that's charities and youth organisations and schools. Now, if you're, let's say Barclays Bank as an employer, it's a big job for you to try and speak to every school and every charity or youth organisation to try and that's not really possible, right?
No, they don't. So they don't have that time.
They don't have the time. So what we want to become is the connection between employers and all of these organisations, because the charities are working with the schools are working with us, and they're funding their users and beneficiaries into our platform. Then at the other side of that, Barclays can advertise and sponsor our courses on top of it, which would give them the access to the talent pool. And finally, on the employer side, how we really are working with them is, we've spoken about the courses that we have on offer at the moment across those 5 sectors. Then we have a 6th category of courses, which is introduction to industry. where what we do is, so we're working with the ACCA, for example, on the accountancy sector, where we build a training course in partnership with the ACCA, which is called an Introduction to Accountancy Careers. They're 2 15-minute training modules. The first module kind of talks about accountancy as an industry, how it fits into the wider economy, takes away all of the language that confuses young people that accountancy firms use all the time, which is still bizarre to me. Like, don't use words they haven't been taught before. Like, it's common sense. So we strip all that away, and the first 15 minutes is about that industry, and then the second part of that module is the career paths available within that industry. So we really just try to explain to a young person, this is, if you're interested in this industry, this is how it works. And then we connect the ACCA to the young people who take the course via the platform, for them to apply for roles and explore the industry further. And hopefully over time that we'll have, we've earmarked 35 sectors, but we want one employer to sponsor all 35 of those sectors, so we can build this fantastic library of resource.
Yeah, and that's where the real power comes from, isn't it? Just having that library of information that you can be linking up the right people with those right employers and vice versa. For you, Danny, listen, you're obviously hugely passionate about this and hugely sort of connected with it. But why is it so important to you? Why is it for you that you're the man that has to do this? Because I'm sure that, you could have just carried on your life and sort of seen the problem and gone, that'll probably get fixed. But you obviously had that conscious thought being like, actually, no, I want to fix this. I want to be the man that drives this forward. So sort of a business aside, for you personally, why is this important to you?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons. So I was actually I did quite well at school up until kind of the end of it. Like the whole way through school, I don't know if your school, but we had like sets and they were spelt out. So our year was called Justice, and J was the top set and E was the lower end. So I was in like
school if it had that.
It was quite big. We had about 500 in our year, I think. Wow. And I was in the kind of the UNS sets the whole way through school, which is kind of tier 2 and 3. So, I was predicted B's and C's. And for whatever reason at GCSEs, I crumbled, whether it was exam pressure, whether I lost faith in the education system. Yeah. And I come out and my highest GCSE was an E, I think, which I hope my first actual ever employer isn't listening to this, because I think I definitely said on my CV I had B's and C's.
Lied on your CV.
Definitely lied about that. So I come out and education didn't suit me. I think that's what I figured out. So my mum was pulled into the assistant head's room with me on exam day, and they said to us, look, Dan's a really smart kid. Like, he's excelled throughout school. He does a lot of extracurricular stuff. We want him to come to sixth form anyway. So we left the room and my mum was like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. I was like, it's not great. What's happened here is you've got, as you've described, a smart kid who just doesn't suit education, who has failed in education. And your idea as a school, the only idea is to put them back into that system. And for me, it just seemed bizarre.
Almost but there was in a patronising way, though, isn't it? Because it's like,
I agree.
He hasn't done great, but we're going to let him in anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So what am I going? I'm going to go in. Everyone else is smart. How I would perceive it at that age.
Yeah.
Everyone else is smarter than me. I'm going to be the one behind.
Conversation.
Right.
It's just,
I'm going to be the one left behind. I'm not going to be able to do it. So it felt punishing. It felt a bit, as you said, kind of insulting. But no one was talking to me about any other options. No one sat down and went apprentice, or back then. I mean, I'm 32, so we're talking about kind of that it was trades, be a builder, be a chippy, be a plumber, or go to university, right?
Get a trade, go to university, or your life's over.
Right, and for me it was bizarre. So I ended up working in a pub for 6 months, I think, just enjoying my youth. And then I applied for a job selling recruitment advertising space in Incisive Media, which was a juggernaut of back in the day for publishing. And I went to 9. Sorry, before I interviewed at Incisive Media, I'd applied for 9 other companies for junior sales roles in London. And all 9 of them said, you're a nice, bright, hungry kid, but you've either not got a degree or you're just not really prepared enough for how the industry works for us to take a chance on you. The 10th interview was incisive, and a guy called Aaron Phillips kind of just went, look, there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do this, but we just believe in you. And I owe him a hell of a lot, obviously, but they gave me that chance. And what I reflected back on was, there were still certain advantages I had over other young candidates, and I think that, they, in regards to my ethnicity, which I think is important about the chances that you get in that space. I was a guy still, and I think particularly back then, gender was super important in sales roles, and to a point it still is. And these are all things that we obviously need to change. But what I thought more importantly was, I was resilient. And I kept going to those interviews. I'd shudder to think how many bright, smart young people gave up after 4 or 5, And a lot of that was because I didn't know how to interview. No one had trained me how to write a CV or how to handle myself.
And it's a ruthless world.
It is, and it is ruthless. So I kept pushing through, and then when I eventually got the job, I've ended up having a great career. I've spent some time in New York. I've worked for 2 of the biggest newspapers in the world. But in my first year at Decisive Media, I didn't know how to handle myself in an office. Like, I didn't know what office etiquette was. I didn't know how to talk to my peers. I didn't know when a manager told me off for something, I'd bite back. I wouldn't take criticism. So one thing that's super important about our business is we don't just help a young person get a job. Our training course will hold their hand the whole way through that first 3 to 4 months. So when they go into work, they could still be taking our courses to make sure that they feel confident and know how to handle certain situations. So to answer your question, the reason I wanted to do it is because I kind of lived it, and I think that I come out of the other side in a pretty strong position. But as I say, there's thousands of kids that don't, and particularly, my family upbringing wasn't perfect, but I had some really strong women in my life to help me through that. And I think that because of that family and because of that strength, I learned that resilience and I pushed through it. But again, there's so many kids that don't have that security in family or in how upbringings that aren't ideal, and they're just not getting the help. They're just not.
I mean, there's also that, like we said, that huge amount of pressure from both sides of that as well. It's the huge amount of pressure from the schools to go down that university route, and because that's the norm. You get asked about your GCSEs, what do you want to do for A levels, what do you want to do for university, and then as soon as you get to university, it's like, great, what do you want to do as a career? So the pressure on like mapping out the next 40 years of your life is really, really increasing. But I do completely agree with you that I think not just because of COVID, but I think just in the last couple of years, because obviously social media and all these elements that have cropped up, that the choice and that amount of information is becoming much more in that individual's career part, is in that individual's choice, which is kind of the same as, the whole work from home situation. It's going to become in the employee's choice, all that kind of stuff. For you with your game plan, you've done amazing stuff in the last year in terms of the creation and getting 50 schools a week on board, which is a huge achievement. So congratulations on that. But what's next? Because in this early stage, you've really thrown yourself into it. It's exploded in a really positive way. You're getting great feedback. This must, one, feel amazing for you to be like, one, I was kind of right, and 2, we've built this platform, we've built this space for these people. What's next? Where do you want to take this? Obviously you want to get into more schools, but for you in the next couple of years, where do you want this to lead?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, for us, there's, so many thousands of schools in the country. Like, we've kind of earmarked 5,000 is the number that we, how long that would take, how we get there, that's always going to be our goal. Like, we're at 250 schools, we're signing up 50 a week. We've signed up 200 students to the platform since Tuesday. Like, it's going in the right direction, but the goal is 5,000. We're not going to sit and go, we'll be happy at 1,000, happy at 2,000. But I think what we've built our platform on is advising young people about their career and employability. There is so much more advice they need. So where I'd like to see the platform go, the first obvious step is to introduce careers events for young people, because I don't know if you've ever been to a young person's careers fair, but it is a circus and it is mental. They basically get 5,000 kids and throw them in the NEC with like 200 employers and then go like, let's hope this works.
I've never been, but I can just imagine the amount of free pens.
They're carnage, and no one talks because, like, as we say, kids don't have the confidence.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know what throwing them into that situation isn't fueling them. It's overwhelming them with the amount of
100%. Yeah. So like BAE Systems are there with their stand, and they're like, "Oh, why does no one want to speak to us?" No one knows what you do. Like, or anyone who,
because you're this big scary company that no one has any idea about what you do.
Well, I actually went to one not too long ago before pre-COVID, and as weird as this can sound, I just started following a group of kids around just to see what they were
Not in
doing.
a
And
creepy way, I hope.
no, not in a creepy way, no. I wasn't filming it or anything, but they were just kind of walking around, as you said, picking up pens and the free swag, and they weren't talking to anyone because no one had pre-qualified them. No one had said to them, if you're interested in a career in engineering, here's the 4 companies for you to go and talk to. So what we'd like to do when we're allowed to, and we might do this digitally first, but what we would like to do is have regional events up and down the country on a small scale, industry specific. So we might say to 5 retail banks, look, we've got 400 kids in Northampton area who have done an introduction to retail banking careers training course. So they understand your industry. They're going to feel way more confident about talking to you. So Barclays, Lloyds, Santander, why don't you all get together to run this event hosted by us? That would be paid for by them. Obviously, you pay us to run this event, and we'll introduce you to 200 kids in your area who are looking to work for your company.
It's a great idea.
So that is one thing we are absolutely clear about. We are not a London or a Southeast centric business. We are working with schools all up and down the country. I mean, this week alone we signed up 22 schools in the northeast of England. So there will be regional events, and the idea is that we'll have 3 or 4 events running a week.
It's just a great tool, like you said earlier, in terms of tools for companies to remove that whole unnecessary conversation about like almost that discovery phase of the students or young persons, and just be able to walk into that room of 400 people in Northampton and know that every single person in that room has shown some sort of interest. I guess the level of interest will obviously be dependent, but some sort of interest in moving into that industry, which just saves a huge amount of time, huge amount of resources, but also gives confidence on both sides, because those speakers from Barclays or HSBC or whatever company it is will know that they're speaking to an engaged audience, rather than what I'm sure happens most of the time, where you're speaking to an audience that have either sat there because they've been told to sit there, or they've just happened to come across a talk at sort of a expo like the one you mentioned, and they've thought, hey, I've got 10 minutes, I'll fill my time.
Then also, it doesn't just waste the time of the students that are there for no reason. It wastes the time of the students that are there for a reason, that have researched the industry, because if that's Barclays in that situation, they know they've got to go from point A, really, really basic.
Such a broad topic.
Right, and you might have students in there that have researched this because they want to do this career, and then they're sitting there going, well, that was terrible because I wanted to come and be educated on the industry. I've read this on the internet. So
that classic thing, isn't it? Oh, they've just told me everything that's on your website.
Right, exactly. You've just wasted everyone's time. So there's limits to what they need to do. And then finally, I say finally, everything's changing every day at the moment. But the one thing I would love to introduce to the business is some kind of lifestyle advisory. This would probably hopefully be in some kind of YouTube channel or something which is a bit more interactive. But cliches are cliches for a reason, and I really want to address the "I wish I was taught that at school" issue, which is what's a mortgage, what are taxes, why shouldn't you get a payday loan when you turn 18, why you shouldn't buy a 4-year phone contract as soon as you can, rental advice for students. So these things that we could probably set up, which is a more lifestyle-led advisory platform for young people when they turn 18. And again, I think
they're hanging out as well, aren't they? They're on your Instagram, they're on YouTube,
right?
Doing that
Exactly. Stuff. And the interesting thing here is it's all well and good to look at this and be like, well, their parents should tell them this, and that's fine. But not everyone is in that position. Not everyone has.
Also, educating their parents who have gone through a certain lifestyle is a lot harder than going straight to the individual themselves through their own platforms that they're spending time on, and showing them and teaching about the lifestyle, because I think that's super key. I remember, I left school at 16, and pre that, no life lessons were really taught. You had what was it called, like PSHE, but that wasn't anything about life. That was just about like social topics or whatever it was. But moving into that, I was quite lucky in terms of an entrepreneurial family, and obviously I moved straight into that sort of world. But I know a couple of my friends who really struggled post university to adjust to that life and move into those graduate roles, and a couple of them go on that the wrong path for a little while, because actually, again, it is overwhelming, and they don't have that. I guess it's also they don't have that identity, do they? They haven't had that time to think, okay, how do I want to be in the workplace? What's the sort of person I want to be? Where at school and university, you've got time. You're there for 3 years. You're at high school or school in general for however many years it is. Whereas at work, you're like, oh, I've got to impress within 30 days, or
Yeah,
I've got
yeah.
to impress within 2 weeks. So
Mm.
again, a huge amount of pressure, which I really love what you guys are doing. I think
Thank you.
you've managed to build in a very short space of time as well. Let's face it, a very great product, a great service, and obviously you're getting fantastic feedback. So I do wish you the best of luck. I guess one of my final questions, Danny, is how can people get on board? How can people help you? How can people find out more about you? You know, we don't, I'll be honest, I don't think I have many 16-year-old listeners, but what we do have is we have people that own businesses. So
Yeah.
how can they help you? How can they get on board with this?
I mean, I think there's three things. I mean, firstly, if I may, we're in the middle of, we're about to start a fundraise, so we've kind of, what we want to do is
get the money.
Yeah, I'll send you my address to send checks to. But no, we're looking to raise, because we're in nearly 250 schools. As I say, there's 5,000. It takes a lot of money to market to schools, and there is stuff that at the moment there's me and my colleague Emma, and we outsource our tech, but we'd love to bring some marketing people in house. So there's obviously if anyone's looking to invest and this is a business you think you'd be interested in, please get in touch. Outside of that, like really simply, like if you know any teachers or anyone who works in a charity, or your own kids are of an age where you think this could help them, it's all about just word of mouth. And as I say, all of the courses are certified. They are they have been qualified by professional bodies. It's all free. The training can be done from anywhere, which is particularly relevant at the moment. We've worked with a couple of charities recently who have told us, we had employability and ambition evenings where we would get, up to 300 people come in, and we've just not been able to do that. So this has been a godsend as a replacement to a degree for them. Anyone who you think could benefit from this as a young person, just let them know about us. And it's such an easy sign-up process. You go to the site, yourgameplan.co.uk, and you can be watching courses in 3 minutes. So Amazing. It's a really quick progress.
Danny, listen, I wish you all the best with this. I'll be watching closely, and let's keep in touch, because I know that you're going to go through some amazing growth, and it'll be great to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Steven.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone else for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365.